Anyway, this seems to be starting.
Recording here. And we'll share the screen. And we'll go into. Okay. All right. So last week we ended with this discussion of Rachav. And that now what was it? It was in if I remember correctly, it was in wait, where was this is a Baraita. It was a Baraita. That a Baraita indicated that Huldah was a descendant of Rachav, the prostitute who was so helpful to the spies in the Joshua story, so they could take Jericho. And 8 prophets, according to this Baraita, descended from Rachav, and we got their names. And some of them were fathers or cousins of some of these people. And then we talked about, then we had a problem with, wait a minute, how could Rachav, how could these people have descended from Rachav if Joshua, so Joshua had, that was the other issue. Joshua had no, according to the book of Chronicles, it looks like Joshua had no descendants. But then we have a statement that Rachav, there were 8 prophets and priests who descended from Rachav. And then we realize that what you do is you put Rachav and Joshua together. Rachav converted, married Joshua, and that's how Huldah was descended from both Joshua and Rachav.
Now, this idea that Rachav married Joshua is part of the creation of a backstory here, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not in any.
No. This is how they're making sense of it. It was also interesting is that this note here, the fact that priests and prophets descended from Rachav is a matter of interest, because it's prohibited for a priest to marry a convert, especially one who was a harlot. A number of commentaries also discuss how Rachav, a member of the Canaanite people, was permitted to marry a Jewish man, albeit a non-priest, after her conversion. The Petach Einayim and others explain that Joshua married her due to heavenly instruction. So there's favoritism in heaven. If you get she wouldn't be able to move to Israel and get married in Israel because of the Orthodox rabbinate, but according to the Talmud, she could be the mother of 8 prophets.
Well, you don't know exactly how widely divine instruction could be spread.
Right.
Speaking of the Orthodox rabbinate.
Yeah, that's right.
So I looked up mentions of Rachav, and they're none after, I think it's chapter 6 of Joshua, except then she's mentioned in Matthew as the mother of Boaz.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which makes Jesse and therefore David and Jesus descendants of her. So I mean, that's interesting. We have Tamar in that story. And then the Christians put Rachav in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been fascinated by some of the women we.
Sure. Well, I think that, yes, but clearly this is, it's that you've got a name, you've got a person, and we don't have their full history. So we give them a history, and we like to connect them. And I think but that's really interesting that Matthew has the connection with Boaz, but we don't have that in I'm not aware, I mean, at least not in this section, we don't have the connection with Boaz, right? I mean, he was.
We don't have it.
That would be something that the rabbis would be hesitant to pick up, isn't it?
Well,
given that it comes from a Christian scripture.
Oh, right. I'm just wondering, but it could have, a lot of these midrashim though come from an Ur text, an older source, right? So the Matthew is picking up from some Jewish earlier midrash.
Yeah. Yeah, that could
Yeah, I don't have a way of, I
Right.
just,
Unless we've got a Jewish source that has it, otherwise you wouldn't know. But that's kind of an interesting connection.
yeah, I don't know if there's an older Jewish source.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, well, in any case, so let's go back to, so you've got these eight names of people. So it was, and some of them where there were fathers and sons, right? I mean, the Neriah and his son Baruch. Baruch ben Neriah, it was Jeremiah's
Jeremiah.
publisher, scribe. Sariah, Machsiah, Jeremiah's father Hilkiah, his cousin Hanamel, and Shalom, which was Hanamel's father. Okay, so the question now is, Bishlama Inhu, okay, so we've got these, the ones who are explicit. There were, the four sons recorded in the list were certainly prophets, as the Bible stated this explicitly. Well, Jeremiah, we know, of course, his student was Baruch. His son Hanamel came to him at the word of God. That's the chapter where Jeremiah buys the property in the land of Israel after prophesying that the Babylonians are going to destroy the state. And Sariah was Hanamel's student, or no, well, I think it was Hanamel's student or Jeremiah's student. Okay, it's not clear here. I have to look it up. But as for their fathers, Hilkiah, Neriah, Shalom, Machsiah, from where do we derive that they were prophets? So we get a little rule here from Ula. Ula said, wherever one's name and one's father's name are mentioned with regard to prophecy, it's known that he was a prophet, the son of a prophet. Because you wouldn't mention the name otherwise. Why is it important to know the name of the prophet? The father's name of the prophet. Wherever his name is mentioned, but not his father's name, it's known that he was a prophet, but not the son of a prophet. Similarly, wherever his name and the name of his city are specified, he's from that city. But if he's not, if the name of his city is not mentioned, then the default is that he was from Jerusalem. Let's just see. The Maharsha explains that there is an indication to this from a psalm, Zion, and of Zion it shall be said, this man and that man was born in her. So famous people come from Jerusalem. All right. Again, B'matnita Tana, we learned in a Baraita. With regard to anyone whose actions and the actions of his ancestors are obscured and not explained, and the verse mentioned one of them favorably, the way in which Zephaniah the prophet is introduced, the word of the Lord which came to Zephaniah, the son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, it is known that not only was he a righteous man, but he was also the son of a righteous man. Whenever the verse mentioned one of them unfavorably, for example, in the verse that introduces Ishmael as the one who killed Gedaliah, states, and it came to pass in the 7th month that Ishmael, the son of Netaniah, the son of Elishama, it is known that not only was he a wicked man, but he was the son of a wicked man. So therefore, basically, depending, the text wants you to know where these people came from. If they're good people, they want you to know that they came from good stock. If they're bad people, they do bad things, they want you to, the text wants to shame the ancestors.
The sins of the children shall be visited.
Right. And I remember Rabbi Schwartz. I grew up in Temple Sholem in Chicago, and Rabbi Fred Schwartz was a rabbi, and he used to tell the story about he was from the south side of Chicago originally, and I guess Loeb and Leopold, the famous murder case with the two Jewish murderers who murdered the young Jewish person, they, like their family, I think the story that he used to tell was that their families changed their name, or they were very hesitant to let people know who they were related to, because it was such a infamous killing that so they didn't want to be affected by the deeds of their family person, and that affected them. So here too, it's saying that if you kid does something rotten, then the text wants to let you know it didn't just come out of anywhere. They came from bad stock.
I just read, Rabbi, sorry
Yeah,
about to interrupt.
sure.
I just read that. I don't know where I got onto this. I get a wiki hole sometimes, and it led to this particular article like 3 days ago. And I told Nate, people from Chicago are crazy, because it was referencing that they were so young, 18 and 19, and they were going to the University of Chicago, and they had just told each other, these two guys, hey, I think we should try to commit the perfect murder.
Right.
What thoughts just pop into people's heads? Like,
Yeah. I think if I don't remember all the details, but I think that it had something like they had read Dostoevsky's
yeah.
What's the book? Come on.
Crime and Punishment.
Crime and Punishment. Thank you.
Yes, thank
Crime
you.
and Punishment.
I just read the article.
Yeah, and that's what they were going to now act it out, and they almost got away with it, except for the glasses that of the
In the entire city of Chicago, such a huge city, there's 3 people with that prescription. I mean, they were meant to get caught.
Right. I mean, it was at that time, you can imagine their murders weren't that common, and so there was a big story. It was so grotesque. And anyway, so okay, let's go on. So here we go. Amar Rav Nachman, Malachi ze Mordechai. See, Malachi, who's the last of the prophets, really means my messenger. Malach is a messenger. So it's not clear that Malachi was his name. That may have just been like a title, or a description. So Rav Nachman says that was Mordechai. So why was he called Malachi? But not related to the word malach, being messenger, but rather Shehaya Mishneh LeMelech. He was second in charge to the king. So he's relating malach, the word malach, to melech. But Meitve, they have an objection to this. Baruch ben Neriah, Usraya ben Maaseya, Vidaniel, Umordechai, Bilshan, Vechagi, Zachariah, Umalachi. They're all mentioned together in a different baraita. Kulan nitnabu bishnat shtaim Daryavesh. They were all prophets. All these prophets were working at the same time under the rule of Darius II, or the reign of Darius. The second year. Okay, second year of Darius. So he couldn't be Mordechai because he's mentioned with Malachi. So they're obviously 2 separate guys. So tiyuvta, that's rarely found it's a statement in the Talmud, which means conclusive refutation. So that can't be. Usually you get different opinions and they just stand. But in this case, it's obvious that he couldn't be because they're both mentioned in the same group of prophets. Tanya, okay, we have a baraita. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha. Malachi was Ezra. So again, Malachi wasn't the name. Malachi was just the title. He was actually Ezra. But other rabbis say no, that was his name, Malachi. Amar Rav Nachman, Mistabra Kimande Amar Malachi ze Ezra. So it's kind of funny here. It's like Rav Nachman said, okay, wrong about Mordechai. I'm telling you, Malachi is not his name. He's somebody else. Okay, he must be Ezra then. I agree with the Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha, because it says Dichtiv in the book of Malachi, Judah has dealt treacherously, and a disgusting thing has been done in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Judah has profaned the sanctity of the Lord, which he loved, and has married the daughter of a strange god. In this passage, it sounds like Malachi is railing against intermarriage. And we know from Ezra that when he came to the community and they had the ceremony of reading the Torah in public, he insisted that all the Israelites who were married to non-Israelite women divorce them. And so that's what the passage is here. It was Ezra. So who is the person who removed the foreign women who were married to Jews? It was Ezra. And where it says, and Shechaniah, the son of Yechiel, one of the sons of Elam, answered and said to Ezra, we've broken faith with our God and have married foreign women of the peoples of the land. It therefore appears that Malachi was one of Ezra's names, as the Bible describes them both confronting an intermarriage epidemic. Okay, so that was one opinion. The rabbis disagreed, but at least there are two possibilities.
Could we
Okay.
go back just for a minute here to this? The quote here is Judah has dealt treacherously, etc. Does Judah must be the kingdom of Judah, right?
Right.
Now, is Israel here the northern kingdom?
Yeah, I'm.
And I wonder if is this reflecting some tension between the two kingdoms?
Well, there were definitely tension between the two kingdoms. Malachi, though, is post-exile, right? He's actually and the reason why they're connecting him with Mordechai and Ezra is because he was around the time of after the Babylonians had conquered Judah, destroyed Judah, then the Persians conquer Babylonia. Malachi is one of the last prophets with Zechariah and Haggai who come back to the land of Israel and are prophesying there. So this is Judah. There's no Judah in Israel at the time of Malachi. And so this has got to be using the two as a descriptive, as like representing Israel as a whole. So Bagda Yehuda.
But if it's representing, okay, I guess that makes sort of sense. I'm just wondering why then would both Judah and Israel be mentioned?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I've gotten too deeply into this kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Malachi's prophecies, but my guess is that he's using Judah and Israel simply as referencing the old
From Dan to Beersheba?
Exactly, the past sovereignties where you had the northern and the southern kingdoms, because in a sense, look, that they're parallel, right? Judah has done treacherously. Bagda Yehuda v'toiva ne'asta b'Yisrael. So Judah, Bagda, Boged is like a traitor, and toiva is an abhorrent thing. And both of them are using ne'asta as the verb. So it's like a parallelism. Bagda Yehuda, toiva Yisrael. And so I'm just guessing that they both mean together, it's like the Jewish people in a sense, or Judah and Israel together, the Israelite nation as a whole.
So this translation says, for Judah has profaned the sanctity of the Lord, which he, lowercase h, loved, implying Judah loved. And the JPS translation is, for Judah has profaned what is holy to the Lord, what he, capital H, desires. So that's a question of what the subject of Ahav is.
Yeah. I'm guessing that he put the small h there is still that it refers back to the Lord, even though it's a small h. I think that it's what God, that Judah profaned what God loves.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
That's definitely the JPS translation.
Yeah. I think it's got to be it. It doesn't make and that the missing pronoun has married the daughter of a strange god is referring to Judah again. That goes back to Judah. Okay. So anyway, so now we're back to the prophetesses. And I just think it's interesting here. Oh, these are about the beautiful ones. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan, Arba Nashim Yafefi Od Hayu Ba'olam. There were 4 like most beautiful women in the world. Sarah, well, we know that. Abigail, Rachav, Esther. So those are the 4 beautiful ones. I think I think we went all the way down here because all right, this is all review from last week. Never mind. But that's okay. So I just think that when we went through Esther, they take Esther off this list because we remember we learned that Esther was Yirak Rakot, and Nate, you suggested, well, maybe that's like olive skin. Don't translate it literally as green, but I don't know. Maybe she was really greenish, so because she was actually green, she wasn't so good looking, and they take her off the list of 4 beautiful women in the world, and they put Vashti
on the Dafyomi thing. A lot of people will make either memes or these kind of posters with quotes from, they'll take a sort of a stock photo, so to speak, and then they'll put a nice and a really nice quote from the Talmud and stuff.
Yeah.
They took a picture from one of the hot alien chicks from Star Trek, the original series that's green, and it said she had beautiful green skin, and it was pretty good.
That's good, very good. Here we get back to Rachav. We learned this one already. This was earlier in the Megillah as well, that Rachav was so beautiful, just hearing her name would inspire a lust. But here we have, each of them have their own, there's something special about their beauty, their uniqueness about their beauty. So in the case of Rachav, her name turned people on. Yael, was she in the list up here? No, she wasn't in the list up here. But Yael, who was the one who killed Holofernes in the
Sisera.
Oh,
Yeah, Sisera.
right. Judith killed
Holofernes. Yeah.
She killed Sisera, right, in the Deborah, in the Judges, in the book of Judges, where the song of Deborah. Her voice was beautiful because, right, she seduced Sisera. And Abigail, by remembering, okay, that was because David remembered her, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, by her appearance. Remember, that was the first wife of David's. Similarly, Rabbi Yitzhak said, anyone who says Rachav, Rachav, immediately experiences seminal emission due to the arousal of desire caused by Rachav's great beauty. We've seen this before, and Rav Nachman at that time said, well, I said that, it doesn't do anything to me. He says, oh, you didn't, what I meant was to somebody who knows her. If you had ever met her and she is so beautiful and you couldn't get her out of your mind, just thinking about her, just saying the words would arouse this unbelievable lust in you. So that was Rachav.
So now this is an alternate list of 4.
That's really interesting, right? You have, it seems like this is a different.
The lists intersect in Rahav. But...
Right. So Rachav, Yael, Abigail, and Michal. And so wait, the other one, wasn't Abigail and the other one too? Where is it? Here we go. Yeah, Abigail and Sarah, and Rachav made the list twice.
Yeah.
Sarah and Esther were knocked off in the second list. Okay. All right. But so we'll keep going here. Now we get into back to the text. We're back to these verse by verse descriptions. So the first one is Mordechai yada et kol asher nasa. When Mordechai received all that was done, perceived all that was done, this is chapter 4, he rent his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes. This is when he goes to Esther and says to her, hey, you got to do something. So what did he cry? What does it say? It says he cried a loud and bitter cry. What was that cry? So Rav said that Haman has risen above Achashverosh. Gava Haman me Achashverosh, meaning that Haman is the real power on the throne and we're in trouble. Shmuel said, Gavar Malka Ila'a mi Malka Tata'a, that the upper king has prevailed over the lower king, which again is euphemistic because you don't really want to say that the lower king, Haman, has overcome God and things are not good for the Jewish people. Well, here they say it's Achashverosh, the lower king, but I think they mean, Well, it could be. I mean, Achashverosh is doing what Haman tells him to do, and I guess they're both kings. But could also be that Haman, the lower power, has prevailed over the upper power, is basically what we're saying.
I sort of read that as having two meanings.
Yeah,
One is the prevailing over God,
yeah.
but the other is Haman prevailing over
Oh,
Ahasuerus.
right. Well, the reason why it's the term ila'ah and tata'ah here in the Aramaic is usually understood as not just the more powerful king over the less powerful king, but ila'ah is the ila'ah meaning the heavenly,
Mhm.
so, and tata'ah being earthly. So I think that's why that's the general understanding. But
I think it still could carry the other meaning as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Although then Shmuel wouldn't be saying anything different than Rav. So if Shmuel was saying that, you'd have the same, they'd be saying the same thing, just in different ways. And I think that Shmuel's point is that the evil in earth is stronger right now, is prevailing over what God intended. And so, and it's obviously he's speaking euphemistically here. So anyway, and that's of course in both cases that's what Mordechai is crying. In one, it's despair that it's a political reference. The real power in this country today is Haman, and he's a bad dude. He hates us and he's trying to kill us, and that's bad for us. Shmuel is making more of a what should we say? It's an existential statement, right? The evil in this world is overcoming, is prevailing over what God wants, and that's really frightening. And that, so which one do you fear more? Which one causes more distress? Now, when the queen hears this, that what he's doing, it says "Vatit chalchal hamalka," which they translate as the queen was very distressed. What does it mean? Vatit chalchal. So Rav says this means she began to menstruate out of fear. And where does he come up with? Because halal is a cavity, and so that one of the cavities of her body opened. On the using the same kind of understanding, Rabbi Yirmiyah says her bowels were loosened, which is, when you're really terrified, those things that can happen. But that's what they're trying to make sense of. The word is very unusual, vatit chalchal, so they're trying to make sense of it. How do you understand it? So what does she do? V'tikra Esther lahatach. She calls to Hatach. Well, who was Hatach, right? We've seen this over and over again. They like to connect things. And since the period of Daniel and the period of the Esther story are approximately the same time, so in fact, Hatach was Daniel. She had this Jewish guy who was her courtier. And why was he called Hatach? Because shechatachuhu migdulato. It's not exact play on words, but it's close. Hatach with a hey is chatach with a chet, meaning he was cut down. He was cut down from his greatness because he had been under the Babylonians. He had been top advisor to Belshazzar, but now under the Persians, he's got to wait on the queen. Ushmuel Amar, this is again Rav and Shmuel. They were famous adversaries in terms of they both led different schools, yeshivot in Babylonia. So Shmuel again says no, he's got a different reading. Shekol divrei malchut nechtachin al piv. Nechtachin here as decided, determined. All the affairs of the kingdom were decided by his word. Obviously, though, not at the same time as Haman and Mordechai and Achashverosh, but previously. Okay, so Ladat Mazeh v'al Mazeh. What does that mean? To know what's up, basically. But literally to know what this was and why it was. Well, they're translating, well, actually, literally, to know what this was and what that was. They're translating it here as what and why. So Rabbi Yitzhak said that Esther sent a message to Mordecai saying, before she goes, she wants to get all of her data straight before she goes to the king with this, with this issue, because she has not told the king who she is, what her people are. So let's get this straight. I don't want to go there and find out that, I'm blindsided by something we Jews have done. So she said, perhaps the Jews have transgressed the 5 books of Moses, as it is written on the 2 tablets on this side and that side. So again, they're doing a play on words with or punning from the book in chapter 32 in Exodus. It refers to the 2 sides of the tablet, Zeh and Zeh. Here you've got Zeh and Zeh. So when she asks, what she wants to know is, did we, are we not doing what we're supposed to be doing with the following the Torah? Because if it's our fault, I'm not going to go put my neck on the line and tell the king that Haman's doing a bad thing. Maybe this is divine punishment. Vayagidu leMordechai et divrei Esther. So they told Esther's words to Mordechai. So the problem here is, she originally said v'tikra Esther leHatach. She called to Hatach to go out and get the news from Mordechai, and then it says v'yagidu, they told Mordechai. Wait, why is it they? Who's the they? It was Hatach. So we learn a lesson here. One does not bring back a sad report. So when you hear bad news, you want to be careful about what you bring. It says, if one has nothing positive to say, it's best for him to remain silent. I'm not sure that's the best advice. But this explains why Hatach himself did not report the information. Let's see. It is generally viewed as proper conduct not to hasten to be the bearer of bad news. Esther's rejection of Mordechai's request to take immediate action was an unfavorable piece of information, and therefore Hatach did not deliver the news personally. Now this is because they're constrained by the text. But we know as Jews, right? What's the famous joke about the guy who wants to save money on the telegram, and so he sends his partner start worrying news to follow. Because we start worrying right away. We want to get before you get all the details. Okay, so this is Esther sent a message. She gets the word from Mordechai. She knows that she's got to be brave. She's got to go before the king and do this, and she wants some support. So she says, "Lech kenoset kol haYehudim." Go and gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan. Fast for me, don't eat or drink for 3 days, night and day, and I and my maidens will also fast, and then I'll go to the king, not according to custom. Okay, so what does that mean? A shalo kedat. Rabbi Abba says it means it will not be according to my usual custom. For every day until now, when I submitted myself to Achashverosh, it was under compulsion. But now I'm going to submit myself to him of my own free will. And I think the idea here is, now I'm going to go, I don't, whenever I've had to sleep with the guy, it's always been, I'm a spy. I'm doing this because I have to. And therefore we saw before, because she did these things under compulsion before, it was eating non-kosher food, and she was hiding herself. And this was therefore this was acceptable. It was she was compelled to do this sin, and so therefore it was understood necessary. But now she's going to go to him when she doesn't have to, and she's going to maybe seduce him to get his goodwill, and therefore she's doing it of her own free will. And that's why it says right afterwards, "V'cha'asher avadati avadati," literally, and if I perish, I perish. But again, whenever you see in the Torah a double word or a repetition of words, I mean, biblical Hebrew, it's emphasis. But if you take it literally, why did she say it twice? And it's because just as I was lost to my father's house ever since I was brought here, right? I've been living as a Persian, so too I will be lost to you, Mordechai. It's very, very romantic here. Because this is, again, if we follow the line that she was really married to Mordechai and only slept with the king when she had to or tried not to, because her true love was Mordechai, but she had to do this for the people. So now, once she submits to Achashverosh by her own free will, she'll be forbidden from Mordechai. She can't sleep with him because it's forbidden for a man to remarry his wife if she's had an affair, slept with somebody willingly, at least according to traditional halakha. So
it says not according to custom, but doesn't the Hebrew say not according to law?
Right. So they're translating as custom here, but I think by kadat, that it's the same force. It's right by according to law. And I don't know why he translated as custom actually, but it would be the same thing. According to law, if I've had to be with this man intimate because I had to, I was compelled to because of my people, because I was protecting myself, then I can continue to be married to Mordechai. But if I go of my own will, and I mean, you can argue, wait a minute, you're going of your own will, you're doing this also under compulsion. But according to this, I think really what they're trying to explain the avadati, and what they're saying is that now that she's going to seduce him, not according to law, not according to the law that I will be going because I need to change the rules here. I need to go because I need to sleep with him to pull out new information, to get things to seduce him into this plan I'm working on. Since I'm arranging this, then I'm going to I lose my relationship with Mordechai. Basically, I was up until now. Basically, what she's saying is I was raped. All of these times however many times she had to submit to Achashverosh, it's considered rape, and that's different from saying, okay, I'm going to go to him to seduce him. I think that's what they're saying. But again, a lot of times we've seen these interpretations are in a sense constrained. It's not maybe the best word because they're very creative, but they're trying to find an explanation, an interpretation of the verses that exist. So here it's avadati. There's two losses that she's referring to. What are those two losses? Well, I'm lost to my father's house because I had to marry this Gentile guy, and I'm lost to you, Mordechai. So I think that's why they're going in that direction. Vayavor Mordechai. What does it mean? Vayavor Mordechai passed. Rav says, again, we have Rav and Shmuel again. Rav says that it's the first day, Shehavir Yom Rishon Shel Pesach B'Ta'anit. Okay, so he's Yavor in the sense of transgression. La'avor is to transgress something. And so an Aveirah is a sin. And so what's he transgressing? Oh, well, it was first day of Passover. And if he was fasting on that day, that's an Aveirah. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to rejoice in the festival and eat the matzah. But Shmuel has a much more practical understanding in this case. Da'avar arkuma the Maya. He crossed over a stream in order to get the message to everybody. So one is referring to his behavior, and one is referring to just the how, what he needed to do to get the message out. Then we've seen this passage as well. This is how we know that she was a prophetess, right? Why does it say she dressed in malchut, royalty? It doesn't say she dressed in bigdei malchut, clothes of royalty. So it translated here as Rabbi Elazar Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Chanina. And this was, remember, there was a long passage of, no, we're coming up to it, sorry. We're about to get to a long passage of statements by Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rabbi Chanina. In any case, we learned earlier that this shows that she was clothed in the Ruach HaKodesh, the divine spirit. Vatilbash Ketiv, and in another verse in Chronicles, Ruach Lavsha et Amasai. There, the reference was to divine inspiration. So here, too, she was dressed in divine inspiration, and that proves she was a prophetess. Now, since we started talking about Rabbi Elazar, who was quoting Rabbi Chanina, we have a whole bunch of statements in that formula. The first one is, Le'olam al tehi birkat hedyot kala be'inecha. Don't treat the blessing of a regular person, a hedyot, lightly. Sheharei shnei gedolei ador berchum shnei hedyotot v'nit kaima bahen. Because we have two examples of great men of their generation who were blessed by two common people, and the blessings came true. It was David and Daniel. David, in the case, he was blessed by Aravna. And it was, may the Lord your God accept you. And that came true. He was king. And in case of Daniel, Darius, so of course is not what you wouldn't call Darius necessarily a hedyot, a common person. He was the king of Persia, but from our Jewish perspective, he was just a regular guy. Your God whom you serve continually, God will rescue you. And that too is fulfilled. So don't take lightly when some everyday person comes up and blesses you. That's really a big deal. And the same should be understood, the vice versa. This is Rabbi Elazar again, in the name of Rabbi Chanina. Don't regard the curse of an ordinary person as light in your eyes. Because we have the case of Avimelech, who cursed Sarah. It was just they're understanding it as a curse. After Avimelech is told by God, do not touch this lady who you've just picked up, and you thought she was the sister of Abraham, but in fact that's his wife, so don't touch her. He releases Sarah and he gives Sarah and Abraham a reward, but he says to Sarah, behold, it is to you a covering of the eyes to all that are with you. Now, according to this, Avimelech was angry at Sarah for tricking him, and that's why he cursed her. And it came true in the case of Isaac. Covering your eyes, meaning, blindness. And it came to pass that when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, he couldn't see. So there was a curse by Avimelech to Sarah that came true in her son. Again, another statement, Rabbi Elazar. Yeah.
It might be worth noting again, Avimelech is hardly the next guy you meet on the street.
Right, yeah, exactly. He's not a hedyot either, but again, these are Gentile rulers. We don't we don't take these people seriously. But we should, even if they curse you, do not take it lightly. All right, here's another statement, same formula. Rabbi Elazar said in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Bo urei shelo k'midat HaKadosh Baruch Hu midat basar v'dam. The quality, the characteristics of the Holy One is not like the characteristics of basar v'dam, a person of flesh and blood. What does a person of flesh and blood do? You put a pot on the fire and then you put in the water. But the Holy One, first puts in the water and then places the pot on the fire, as it says in Jeremiah. At the sound of his giving a multitude of waters in the heavens, which he explains as follows. First, God sets multitudes of water in place, and then he created the heavens to hold the water.
Questions on that?
Yeah.
Or one comment and one question. First of all, I never realized what the significance of my making my oatmeal in the morning. And secondly, how are the waters held in place during the time it takes to create the heavens?
Right. So I think this must be a reference to the creation story, right? When that God created, God separates
God
the water, right?
God separates. So remember it, if I remember the creation story.
And then God later on, when God creates the sky and all the things in the sky, that's when God creates the clouds that hold the water. So first you've got upper waters, and then you've got clouds that eventually hold the water, which the waters go through. So God does it the other way around. I really read it as,
Wait.
yeah.
As if we do it the other way around too.
I would have read it more in this sense, that God creates the solution. And when we've seen this before too, that God at least for the Jewish people, God creates the solution to the problem before the problem. Just that's how I kind of read it, I guess, as I was going through it quickly. First, you've got the solution, and then you've got the situation that requires the solution. Mm-hmm. But they're reading it here literally as, water. First, there's water up above, and then you create the holders for that water, the containers for that water. All right, another statement by Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rabbi Chanina. Kol ha'omer davar b'shem omro mevi geula le'olam. Whoever teaches something in the name of the one who said it brings redemption to the world. This is a major teaching of in Judaism, that when you share something, you should always say it in the name of the person who said it. So I guess it's like the first anti-plagiarism idea, but it's taken very seriously in Jewish teaching, because so often rabbis would teach in the name of they would teach what they learned from their teacher. And so it was very important to acknowledge that you're teaching in the name of that whatever you teach, the lesson you're teaching is being taught in the name of your teacher. I try to be very careful about that when I preach, that I quote the person who where I learned this teaching from. And that's the idea here too. But here we're back to the book of Esther, where Esther does that exactly. Esther reported to the king the whole story about Bigtan and Teresh in the name of Mordechai. And the end of the story brought redemption. So that's the idea, that when you teach in the name of your teacher or whoever, or you share the name of the person, whoever you got the idea, you're bringing redemption into the world. Ve'amar, Rabbi Elazar Amar, Rabbi Chanina, yet another teaching with this formula. Tzaddik avad ledoro avad. When a righteous person leaves this world, he leaves it only for the rest of his generation. He's lost only for the rest of his generation. But he's not lost himself. And then they have this beautiful image that mashallah adam she'avda lo margalit. A person loses a pearl, kol makom shehi margalit. Wherever the pearl is still the pearl. It's just that the guy's lost it. So I think that the idea here is that when a great person leaves us, that person's identity and their teachings still live on. we're deprived of having that individual with us, but whatever they represented in this world is still there, and it's still true. It doesn't get, we don't lose that person. So I think that I love that teaching. I think you can say that about any time we lose somebody very important to us. All right, then we go on to Haman. All right, now Haman is, remember in the story, he's very excited that he got to be, that he's now got all this power from the king, and the king keeps inviting him to these special dinners with Esther. And he says, "V'chol zeh einenu shovel li," means nothing to me because I'm just so angry every time I see that guy Mordechai. So yet again, Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rabbi Hanina. When Haman saw Mordechai sitting at the king's gate, he said, "Yet all this avails me nothing." Right. So when did he make that statement? When he saw Mordechai hanging out. Mordechai was still at the king's gate, and that comes from, this may be understood as was suggested by Rav Chisda, who said, this one came as one with the heritage of a rich man, a prosbuli, vizebar prosbuti. A prosbuti is a heritage of a poor man. I think what they're saying is, which is really interesting, then there's this midrash that Mordechai owned Haman as a slave, and he was aware of Haman's lowly lineage. And Rav Papa said that he was called, Haman was known as the slave who was sold for a loaf of bread. According to the midrash, 22 loaves of bread. And we have here, eventually we're going to get to it in chapter 16, page daf 16, that there's this midrash, which is not found in the Talmud, but in Midrashim, that Haman was a barber and a bathhouse attendant who rose to become one of Achashverosh's ministers. And Achashverosh sent him and Mordechai as army officers to the battlefront. Haman enjoyed himself while away and squandered all of his money. And then he was hungry, and so he had to sell himself as a slave to Mordechai. Although Haman rose to greatness upon his return, he wanted to destroy Mordechai. So that's where a lot of the hatred comes from. So in a sense, you could say, again, we've seen this line of thinking before, that Mordechai's, that the anger Haman has towards Mordechai, which he then makes him prejudiced against all Jewish people, may have come because of Mordechai's behavior, right? Before it was, Mordechai, well, we've talked about it, Mordechai didn't bow down to the idol. Mordechai didn't bow down to Haman. Mordechai and Haman were rivals. And here, it turns, according to this midrash, Mordechai was a rich guy, and and Haman was very poor, so he resented that. And then not only that, but Mordechai may have owned Haman as a slave and made fun of him all the time. So all of a sudden, we're feeling sorry for Haman. Another verse, another interpretation. This teaches that all the treasures of that wicked one were engraved on his heart. And when he saw Mordechai sitting at the king's gate, he said, as long as Mordechai is around, all this that I wear on my heart avails me nothing. This, I think, is more of a psychological statement, right? I mean, it's really his sense of inadequacy towards Mordechai is engraved on his heart. You could say it's engraved in his brain, and he can't. What's the line about? Not regret. It's your negative thoughts to a person are letting the person live in your head rent free. What's it's not regret, but I can't think of the word I'm looking for. But the negative feelings we have towards others, that we have towards another person, you're basically letting the person live in your head rent free. Let it go. And he couldn't let it go. And that's what it means. That it was more important for him to get rid of, to attack Mordechai than all these other wonderful things, all this power that he was gaining. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina. In the future, the Holy One, blessed be He, will be a crown on the head of each and every righteous man, as it is stated. In that day, the Lord of hosts shall be a crown of glory and a diadem of beauty to the residue of His people. What's the meaning of crown of glory? The term here is a teret tzvi, and for a diadem, a tzvirat of beauty. A crown for those who do His will, siv yono. Let's see, what was it he wrote? Siv yono, and mitzapin, and those who mitzapez to wait, and those who await His glory. One might have thought that this extends to all such individuals. Therefore, the verse states, to the residue of His people, to whoever regards Him as a remainder, small and important. As a shirayim, as a leftover. That is small and unimportant, like residue, a little leftover. But whoever holds himself in high esteem will not merit this. Right, I missed that part. That day of the weight His glory. Yeah, I think I'm not sure I understand the translation. To l'sha'ar amo, to those who consider God as shiraim, that is the. It seems to me that what it's saying is to those who consider God even as a little bit of leftover. It's not even the most important thing, but you're still considering God as important to you. Will merit this, that you've got to remain true to God, even as this sense of waiting as a leftover, as something that you're still holding on to. I don't know, he translates it differently. Okay, let's keep going. L'ruach u'leruach mishpat zed dan et yitzro u'liyashev al mishpat. So this is from that verse. For a spirit of justice to him that sits in judgment, and for strength to them that turn back the battle to the gate. For a spirit of justice, that's referring to those who bring his evil inclination to trial, force him to repent. To him that sits in judgment, that's referring to a person who judges an absolutely true judgment. This is referring to judges, I think. And for strength, this is referring to one who triumphs over his evil inclination. Them that turn back the battle, this is referring to the give and take in their discussion of halakha, that is battling with a partner over the understanding of Torah. To the gate, this is referring to the Torah scholars who arrive early and stay late at the darkened gates of the synagogue and study halls. And so that's who all this glory and beauty is going to come to. Amrami datadin lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now we got this little interesting interlude. The attribute of justice said before the Holy One, blessed Master of the universe. How are these referring to the Jewish people different from those, the other nations of the world, such that God performs miracles only on behalf of the Jewish people? And the Holy One, blessed be He, said to it, the Jewish people occupied themselves with Torah, whereas the other nations of the world did not occupy themselves with Torah. So Torah seems to be the determinant here of whether you get the benefit of from God, of the treat where God is able to treat you righteously or treat you more fairly. But the attribute of justice said to him, though these also, they keep going in this verse in Isaiah, these also reel through wine and stagger through strong drink. The priest and the prophet reel through strong drink. They are confused because of wine. They stagger because of strong drink. They reel in vision. They stumble in judgment. So, and this refers to Gehenna, that they're in Gehenna. So the response to the attribute was essentially that the Jewish people have also sinned and are consequently liable to receive punishment. So this is it's interesting that there's no response after this. There's no response by God after this. The attribute of justice is saying, wait a minute, the Jews aren't so great either. They also are deficient in Torah. So what's going on here? Now, he says, this is Steinsaltz's interpretation. The response of the attribute of justice was essentially that the Jewish people have also sinned and are consequently liable to receive punishment. Now, a couple of other commentators say, I just wanted to see, this is what the Art Scroll interpreted it differently. There we go. Okay. Where is 14.4? No. Wait a minute. No, it's not 4. Where was it? Here it was. Maybe it was here. Oh, here it is. Here it is. That Stein's in the Art Scroll, it says that justice agrees with God and notes that the Jews in Gehinnom are there for a reason. So here, so according to the Art Scroll interpretation of this last piece is, God, you're right. If they occupy themselves with Torah, they get a break. But if they don't, that's when these Jews end up in Gehinnom as well. And Joshua Kulp, who's a conservative rabbi in Israel, says, the attribute of justice argues before God, why do you give this reward to righteous people who have the above attributes of self-control and not to everyone? The answer is that those who are righteous but still follow their appetites, even with wine and strong drink, they are treated as if they were wicked. So the Midrash is heavily focused on self-control. Only those righteous who are able to control themselves are deserving of such a great reward. Indeed, we might say that a righteous person who does not control himself is even more deserving of such a serious punishment. So the attribute of justice is actually, in this case, responding to God, saying, hey, that's great with the Jews who occupy themselves with Torah, but you know what? They're Jews who don't, and they should be punished accordingly. All right, let's finish up here. The Gemara, now we go back to the Torah verses, the scriptural verses. V'ta'amod b'chatzar beit hamelech hapinimit. She stood in the inner court of the king's house. According to Rabbi Levi, once she reached the chamber of the idols, which was in the inner court, the divine presence left her because she was hanging around with idols. As we know from Psalm 22, my God, you have forsaken me. Perhaps it is because you judge an unintentional sin as performed intentionally, right? I didn't mean to walk through this idol-laden palace. I just did. But maybe unintentional sin is just as bad as intentional. Or perhaps you have left me because in my prayers I called Haman a dog, as it is stated, deliver my soul from the sword, this is also from Psalm 22, my only one from the hand of the dog, although Art Scroll says it's, she was talking about the king. She had at once retracted and called him in her prayers a lion. Save me from the lion's mouth. So according to, I think Art Scroll makes a little more sense. I think it's probably referring to the king as a dog, because again, remember the Talmud does not have a favorable view of the king. And so it was, here's the next verse. So it was that when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Rabbi Yochanan says 3 ministering angels happened to join her at that time. One raised up her neck, that she should stand erect, free of shame. One strung a cord of divine grace around her. Remember, that was one of her names, referring to the grace around her, and endowing her with charm and beauty, and one that stretched out the king's scepter, because she wasn't that close to him. And then we have one of these classic, exaggerations of size in the Talmud. How much was it stretched? Oh, well, it was 2 cubits. And he made it, it was 2 cubits long, which is about, a cubit is, I think, 1.5 feet. So it's about 3 feet, but the angel stretched it to 12 feet. 12 would be 18 feet. And some say that he made it 16 cubits, and another say it was 24 cubits. It was taught in the Baraita. He made it 60 cubits. And similarly, you find with the arm of Pharaoh's daughter, which she stretched out to take to Moses. This is a reading of the text. Her Amma, which is also her female servant, but they're reading it here as the arm, because an Amma is an arm's length, the arm of Pharaoh's daughter, which she stretched out to reach, to grab the Moses. And so too you find with the teeth of the wicked, as it is written, you have broken the teeth of the wicked. Don't read it, according to Reish Lakish, don't read it as broken, but rather as enlarged, she'ribvata, from the word like rav, to get bigger. And Rabbi Bar Ofran said in the name of Rabbi Elazar, who heard it from his teacher, the scepter stretched 200 cubits. We don't have to get too graphic here to say that maybe they're not talking about a scepter that got bigger, but when he saw her beautifulness, something else. Okay. Vayomer la Hamelech. Then the king said to her, what is your wish? Even to half the kingdom it shall be performed. Why does he say, he doesn't say half, he says ad chatzi. And when he did say chatzi malchut velo kol malchut, meaning velo davar shechotzetz lemalchut, half the kingdom, not the whole kingdom, not something that would serve as a barrier to the kingdom. Chatzi and chotzetz, again, playing with the word here, chotzetz is a barrier. And what is that? The building of the temple. That is, if it be your will, if that be your wish, that will not be fulfilled. So I'm not rebuilding the temple. That would be a chotzetz, a barrier to my kingdom, if the temple were rebuilt. That's how they're interpreting it. Yavoha melech v'Haman el mishteh. That if it seems good to the king, let the king and Haman come to this day to the banquet I've prepared for him. And the sages taught in a Baraita, what did Esther see to invite Haman to the banquet? And now we get a lot of different solutions. We'll go through them quickly because it's time. One possibility, she hit a snare for him. She was trying to trick, right? This was a trick to get Haman, to trip up Haman during the banquet. Rabbi Yoshua says it was a lesson she learned from her father's house. If your enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat. The rest of that proverb says that it messes with his head if you do that, right? Because I'm your enemy, but you're giving me bread to eat. I don't know how to think about you. Rabbi Meir says she invited him in order that he be near her at all times, so that he would not take counsel and rebel against Achashverosh. That's like the line about, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Rabbi Yehuda says she invited Haman so that it not be found out that she was a Jew. He had that information. She didn't want him sharing that with the king. Rabbi Nehemiah says she did this so that the Jewish people would not say, hey, we have a sister in the king's house, and consequently neglect their prayers for divine mercy. We don't have to worry about it. She'll take care of it. No, you've got to keep praying. Everybody needs to do their part. Rabbi Yossi says she acted in this manner so that Haman would always be on hand for her, so that would enable her to find an opportunity to cause him to stumble before the king. The more he's around, the more he'll open up and say something he shouldn't say. Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh said, perhaps God will take notice that all are supporting Haman and nobody is supporting the Jewish people, and God will perform for us a miracle. So by inviting Haman, it makes it look like Haman is stronger, or is very strong, and God will say, oh my God, I better get involved and do something. Rabbi Yoshua ben Korach says, She said to herself, I will act kindly toward him and thereby bring the king to suspect that we are having an affair. And she did so in order that both he and she would be killed. Essentially, Esther was willing to be killed with Haman in order that the decree be annulled. Well, she certainly got the king to start being suspicious, as we'll see as we go a little farther. Rabban Gamliel says, Achashverosh was a fickle king. And Esther hoped that if he saw Haman on multiple occasions, eventually he would change his opinion of him. Rabban Gamliel said, we still need the words of Rabbi Eliezer HaModai to understand why Esther invited Haman to her banquet. Rabbi Eliezer HaModai said she made the king jealous of him, and she made the other ministers jealous of him, and in this way she brought about his downfall. Rabbah says Esther invited Haman to her banquet in order to fulfill that which is stated, pride goes before destruction, or pride goes before the fall, which indicates that in order to destroy the wicked, one must first bring them to pride. And that can be understood as, according to Abai and Rava, who both say that she invited Haman in order to fulfill the verse, when they are heated, I will make feasts for them, and I will make them drunk, that they may rejoice and sleep a perpetual sleep. That's from Jeremiah. The Gemara relates that Rabba Bar Avua once happened upon Elijah the prophet and said to him, in accordance with whose understanding did Esther see fit to act in this manner? What was the true reason behind her invitation? And Elijah said she was motivated by all the reasons previously mentioned and did so for all the reasons previously stated by the Tanaim and all the reasons stated by the Amoraim. And I think, wow, these really got a long passages of Midrashim in these sections. If you looked at the page itself in the Gemara, it's like just huge, almost no commentary. It's just this huge, because they're all Midrash. Anyway, we'll try to finish up here. Haman recounted to them the glory of his riches and the multitude of his sons. This is, he's speaking to his family and his supporters. How many sons did he in fact have that are referred to as the multitude of his sons? 30. 10 of them died in childhood. 10 of them were hanged, as we know in the book of Esther, and 10 survived and were forced to beg at other people's doors. How do we know they were begging at other people's doors? Actually, there were 70 of them. Those that were full have hired themselves out for bread. Don't read full, rather Shiv'im, 70. The 70 sons were hired out for bread. Rabbi Rami Bar Abba said, all of Haman's sons together numbered 208, as the word multitude is the numerical value of 208. In fact, the numerical value of the word Verov equals 214, because the word Verov is written, equals 214. 200, well, how does it equal 200? How does it equal more? Not 208. The word Verov is written in the Bible. It depends on how you write it out. Do you write it out full with a vav? But in the text, it's without the vav. It's rov, just the o vowel sound that above the letter resh. So there's no vav in there. So it's, well, there's one vav, virov. So that's how you get 208. Okay. And then finally we get to, on the chapter 6, on that night the sleep of the king was disturbed. What king are we talking about? Rabbi Tanchum says the king of the universe. God was disturbed. The sages say the sleep of the higher ones, the angels, were disturbed, and the sleep of the lower ones, the Jewish people, were disturbed. Rava said this should be understood literally. It was actually King Achashverosh. Now, why was he disturbed? Because a thought occurred to him, and he said to himself, what is this before us that Esther has invited Haman? She keeps inviting this guy Haman. What's going on here? Maybe they're conspiring against me to kill me. And he then said again to himself, if this is so, first of all, I think that's interesting, because all kings got to be paranoid, right? I mean, everybody wants to kill the king. So his paranoia is getting to the best of him. And then he says, I've got to find somebody who loves me. and would inform me of this conspiracy. So he then said again to himself, perhaps there is some man who has done a favor for me, and I haven't properly rewarded him. And due to that reason, people refrain from revealing to me information regarding such plots, as they see no benefit for themselves. See, this is the paranoia speaking to him. And he says, immediately, bring me the book of remembrances so I can find out what's going on. If there's anybody I haven't rewarded, and then I'm going to go out and reward them. And okay, let's end here, because then it goes into chapter Daf 16. All right, so that was a little longer today, but we're getting to the end of the chapter. And at the end of the chapter, they always have these long, or not always, but many times the chapters end on midrashim. So chapter on Daf 16, we're going to finish our first chapter, and we'll continue with the second chapter of Megillah. All right, that's it. So we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great day.
Take care. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.